Well, howdy, howdy. How's everyone doing today? It is Friday. It's Friday. By the way, that's my pet peeve is when people call Friday Friday. But hey, that's just old guy Chris talking. Get off my lawn, kids. Anyway, hope you guys are having a great day. Hope you guys have awesome plans for the weekend. Yeah, I only get on these lives Monday through Friday, so you're on your own after this day. So Saturday and Sunday, you're just going to get an email. That's all. So I want to encourage you to get caught up. Get caught up on maybe the videos that you missed. Get caught up on the emails that you haven't read. Get caught up on the emails that maybe you have not put into practice yet. So you might need to, if you have not done this so far, go back to day number one. Remember day number one where we talked about setting up your environment to win, and maybe you haven't done that yet. So don't go another day without going through the action items on day one and making that a priority, because everything else through the rest of this month will just be fluff. If you're not, they're really, all these days are kind of meant to build upon each other, and especially this first week, it's kind of gold medal week, and so I don't want any silver medals. I want all of our 30 Days to Amazers, you amazing people, to have nothing but gold medals, 100% compliance when it comes to setting up your environment to win. So before I get to the email today, a couple of comments came in and some things I wanted to riff on, some really good stuff in our group and in some of the messages that I got. So one person, I don't know if you read, I won't call them out, I always try to keep everyone anonymous, but hey, when you type it out, you're fair game. But one of our amazers was talking about what we talked about yesterday about maybe dairy being problematic for some people and probably 75% of the world being problematic for. And it just made me think about just cravings in particular. We talked a lot about that yesterday, about you crave what you feed. Whatever you continue to feed yourself are the things that you crave. And that's why I think elimination diets, and I said that word diets like negative, but let me just do this again. Elimination diets, maybe like Whole30, maybe you've heard of that before. That's an awesome one. But this is kind of what we're doing too. We talked about the very first day about eliminating the unholy trinity of food-like substances. So once you start to do that, that's an elimination diet. And what you don't put in your body is probably going to have more of a dramatic effect than what you do put in your body. Can I say that again? What you eliminate is going to have a lot more health consequences for the better than what you put in. You know, everyone's arguing about, what you need to put in. It's probably should have the conversation of what you need to eliminate. And that's what's so great about these short-term elimination diets, if you want to call it that, is that we usually have no idea how crappy we're feeling until we start feeling good. And then we feel like, then we remember how it feels to be crappy again. Does that make any sense? So for me, I mean, if you would ask me 5 years ago, like, how are you feeling? I was like, yeah, feel pretty good. I mean, everything seems to be working right. But it wasn't until I got on the other side of really starting to feel good, where I'm not getting sick every 3 months, where I have a lot more energy, where I don't have the usual gastrointestinal blowouts. Sorry to give you too much information, but just, all sorts of digestive issues that I just thought were normal, just a normal part. I never thought anything of it until they went away. And then I was like, I had no idea how cruddy I was feeling until I started feeling really good. So back to the 30-day elimination experiment. So let's just bring it back to dairy, for instance. That's why I think it might be a really good practice, whether it's dairy or whether it's anything else in your life, is just to see if you can go a whole month without those inputs and see what dramatic effect it has on your life. You might not even recognize it. So I know people that I've worked with, for instance, that had joint pain for years, and then they worked with me for like 1 month and their joint pain disappeared, but they didn't even really notice it until we talk about it later on. Like, I remember when I used to have just like joint pain, like all over my knees, and I'm just always like doing this, and I just kind of don't do that anymore. It's like some of these things, they just kind of magically disappear. Maybe not everything, but a lot of the symptoms that we think are normal, or maybe a normal part of aging, or just a normal part of just being human, might not be that normal. And so that's why these elimination diets are so powerful. It's like you can just change a couple of the inputs and eliminate some of the things that might maybe be problematic. And here's the great thing, you don't have to do it forever. So for instance, let's say it's dairy and you ditch dairy for a month and you don't really notice anything. Well, then what you can do is you can slowly bring dairy back in. And then you can begin to make some notes like, wow, man, I suddenly feel a little bit lethargic. Oh my gosh, the scale was going down for the month and now it seems to be plateaued, or now it seems to be going up. Or maybe I'm more nasally or congested, or maybe more allergic, So those are all the things that I think when you eliminate something and then you bring it back in slowly, you can really begin to see. I did this with, it wasn't really an elimination diet, but I did it with alcohol. I talked a little bit about my beer cravings that I don't have anymore. And by the way, this wasn't like a 30-day elimination, but I was thinking about just the role of alcohol in my life and how I don't really drink anymore. Now, full disclosure, I had one shot of Kentucky bourbon whiskey last night. I'm going to come back to that in a second. But talking about just like alcohol, like I just began to, I don't know what happened, but I think it was right when I hit about like my 40s. Drinking wasn't that fun anymore. I mean, I like to get in like a buzz, like most of us do, and we have a glass of wine or 2 glasses of wine or a bottle of wine, and I really enjoyed the buzz, but I began to have health consequences from that. And this was before I was Mr. Health Guy too. I just began to notice like, wait a second, my sleep isn't really that good after I drink. And I used to be able to have like 4 beers and function what I thought was pretty well. But then it got to a point where I'm having 2 beers like in a night and I am feeling really awful. Like it got to the point where I was wrecked until noon the next day. So I had terrible sleep. I woke up lethargic and headachy, and I would kind of come around at like 12:30 after lunch. And so after 100 times of doing that, I began to not crave alcohol as much. And again, that you could say that was kind of like an elimination diet. I went from 4 to like 3 to 2. And after doing about 2, I would start to walk down a grocery aisle and I would look at all the, the beautiful displays of like beer. And I'm like, oh, I just had this intense like craving for that. I'm like, wouldn't that be so good? But then I started to remember, wait a second. I remember that I sleep terrible with this, that I get headaches, that I'm wrecked for, a good 12 hours afterwards at least. Definitely not operating my best for the rest of the day. And it's like something clicked with my lizard brain going, okay, instead of a 6-pack of delicious sour wheat beer, I would look at that and said, that's like a 6-pack of headache right there. That's like 3 massive headaches, and so do I really want that? And after a while of just beginning to like, I still craved it, I still wanted it, but after a while it's like, man, that just doesn't have the same kind of attraction and pull on me anymore. So back to my, do I eliminate alcohol 100%? Not really. It's just such a rare thing. But last night I'm like, yeah, I think I feel like a shot of whiskey. And it didn't wreck my sleep, but I kind of woke up at like 2, and I was just like, I hardly ever wake up in the middle of the night. And I felt a little bit kind of headachy, a little brain foggy. By the morning I was fine, but I'm going to make a mental note of that. If I feel like having a shot of whiskey tonight, it's like, I'll have to make the determination of, is it worth it? We'll talk a lot about that coming up, but that's a great question to ask. Like, is it worth it? And a lot of times we have to, quote unquote, fail many, many times to figure out if eating or drinking or consuming or whatever it is it worth it? And that's a really good thing to constantly evaluate in our lives when it comes to diets and things like that. I got a quick story, and then I'll get to what Kimberly said because I thought what she said was so brilliant. I have this friend, one of my best friends, and a couple of years ago he went to Indonesia, and he lived there for a couple of years. And one of the things he wanted to do there was build a school in one of the poorest parts of Jakarta. And so he built this school, and I can't remember how many kids there was. I think it was like 75 kids or something like that in this small little community, and he just had an elementary school. So after the very first year, it was graduation time, and my friend, being the big rich American, I mean, he's just a middle-class American guy, but in the poor parts of Jakarta, you can do a lot with a middle income from America. But anyway, he's like, man, I really want to treat these kids. So he devised a plan. So what he wanted to do is he loaded them up in a rental bus, and he took them into downtown Jakarta, and he bought these 75 kids a dinner to, ready for it, Pizza Hut. He's like, man, these kids have never had a deep dish crust, cheesy, saucy, delicious pepperoni like pizza like every American kid. And so he was so excited to treat all of these kids to just the feast of their lives. It didn't work out that way because these kids walked into Pizza Hut pretty much holding their nose like, what was that smell? Cheese? Yeah, that was disgusting. And sure enough, when they ate pizza, they thought it was like the grossest thing they've ever had. And they were like, can't we just like go and get some rice and beans somewhere? And I always remember that story because that goes back to, you crave what you feed. I mean, those kids, I thought they were crazy when I first heard that story. Like, how could a kid like not like pizza? But when it just reminds me that our taste buds are so shaped, and not only our taste buds, our mouth pleasure sensors, but so much of our brain activity and our habits and the things that we're conditioned with are so much and probably mostly a product of just of our environment. We crave what we feed, right? So these kids crave just an awesome bowl of rice and beans, better than the ones that they got in school. That would have been like a big treat for them, not Pizza Hut. They probably had the same reaction if my friend took them to 7-Eleven and got Slurpees, or went to Chick-fil-A and got chicken sandwiches. I mean, I don't know, but you crave what you feed. And so much of what we think that, I don't know if I could just ever go without. For me, it was beer or lasagna or chocolate. For some of these, it's like, man, those things are so easy to get rid of, and I've never craved them again. There's other things that, man, the thought of losing them causes all sorts of like emotional pain and distress. And so I think just knowing that, going, hey, I know that it's going to be hard at first. I know that I'm going to have cravings, but here's what else I know, because Chris told me this. And plus I know this because I don't like the same foods that I liked when I was a kid. I know that cravings can and will change. It's all just a matter of how often and how much I'm feeding those cravings. All right, so you begin to kind of short circuit those cravings with other aligned foods, like everything on that Optimized Life approved foods list. You begin to just replenish all of your food supply with those kinds of foods, and you begin to incorporate exercise, which we'll be talking about a little bit next week, and you begin to get great sleep, and you begin to expose a lot of your skin to sun, and you do all these other inputs. Then you start to begin to feel a lot better. And cravings, not overnight for most of us, but cravings will just go away, and they will change. They won't go away. They will just change. They will change to other things, and that's kind of what you want, because that's when it becomes effortless. When you begin to crave things that you feed, but that are also supportive for you, that are honoring to you, that are going to give you life and energy and vitality and none of the negative consequences. So that's what we want. One of the things that Kimberly, if you didn't read this, wrote, and I highlighted a couple things that she said. I'm going to read a lot of it, but she said in her own sort of dairy elimination diet way back, she says, I'm not going to lie, it sucked at first. Yeah, it sucks at first. Whenever we're eliminating something that we like for our taste buds and also for our emotional responses to that, our conditioned response to that, it sucks at first. She said I had withdrawal and cravings, but then it all went away and I didn't crave it anymore. So Kimberly, did that happen just overnight, or was it gradual? Did you notice it right away, or did you kind of look back on it and go, not really sure, so let us know about that. I also magically lost 15 pounds. That's crazy. Yeah, I think I told you yesterday that I lost 9 pounds after 2 months. And then I was like, okay, is it worth it? I mean, I like my dairy. I love my Greek smoothie yogurt shakes, and I love my heavy whipping cream on strawberries every night, but it's not 9 pounds worth it for me. No freaking way. So that was a pretty easy, just to look at the scale and say, man, it's definitely not worth it. I mean, I like that stuff, and not 9 pounds worth of body fat. Forget that. The crazy thing here is that I didn't have digestive issues with dairy, but it was clearly causing a large amount of inflammation in my body. And so I love that detective work that Kimberly's doing, or she did. It's just like, okay, it looks like I don't have digestive issues. It looks like everything else works, but man, it's got to be creating some inflammation if I've lost 15 pounds. And this is the part that I read from her that I just thought was so good. I was almost crying during this, but she said, also, I don't have any scientific data to back this up, but I have a hunch that oftentimes the thing that we cling so tightly to is the thing that is holding us back the most. Woo. Kimberly dropping bombs of truth there. That is so true. The thing that we feel is holding us back the most is usually the thing that we probably should eliminate. So let that be a ding, ding, ding. Like it's probably something intuitive inside of us that knows that, hey, you know what? We're causing us harm. We're causing us. We're consuming something that's dishonoring to us. That's not supportive of us. That's not loving towards us. And that might be the thing that we need to get rid of the most. She writes, there is a reason you feel the nudge to give it up. Don't ignore your body. Your body is team you and only you. Gosh, I love that. Listen to her. I think she was talking about listen to her, like listen, to your body. Lady who wrote this, Peanut. By the way, if you want to call, never mind. Peanut is just a nickname that someone has from her husband, but I adopted it. It's a fun name. Your body is team you and only you. Listen to her. I'm saying listen to Kimberly because that is just sage advice. So just don't ignore your body. Your body is for you. It's not against you. It's trying to tell you stuff that I hope you believe this because I believe this, is that our body is, it knows what to do. Talked about this yesterday. It knows exactly what to do. And if you will just honor it, if you will just give it the inputs it desires and needs, it's going to do right by you as well, too. It wants you to succeed. It wants you to feel great all the time. It wants you to have boundless energy. It doesn't want you to be carrying too much excess, unneeded body fat. It wants to keep you alive for a long amount of time, and not just a long amount of time, but just a time where you're going to have health and vitality way into your elder days. So thanks for sharing with that, you guys, and really appreciate just the good dialogue with that. So it's a challenge, but might just be. And again, there's no guilt associated with that. If you don't want to do that, if you're not ready to do that, there's no timetable for all of us on that. But these are just like links in a chain, and sometimes either that's nature or God or the universe trying to just get our attention with this stuff, and it's a good idea to pay attention to those little inputs. All right, here's a message that came in today. And I'll read it. It says, hey, Chris, not sure if you'll eventually touch on this, but I was wondering about eating out. My wife wants to go out for a date night. Hey, that's good, by the way, if you have a wife that wants to go out on a date with you. So you must be doing something right. Anyway, he says, I want to know if there are any tips to going out. We're planning on going out for steak dinners. So first of all, steak dinners, awesome. Yeah, do that. That's a good thing. So here's how I would answer that is just, I don't really have any hard and fast tips with that because, we're completing all of our rules today, right? So we're on rule number 3, which we'll touch on in a little bit. But I would say this, that all food, and let's just take restaurants, for example. Let's say you go to the restaurant and you open up the menu. You are presented with a spectrum. You are presented with a large spectrum. So on one hand, you have maybe the unholy trinity of foods. It might actually be this much of the spectrum. But you can see on the one hand, those might be all the things that that, hey, those would not be self-honoring and supportive to eat these and consume these. You might say it's worth it, and that's a whole other conversation we'll have later. But, for the most part, okay, this is on one end of the spectrum, and on the other end of the spectrum is like, hey, these are the things that are on the approved foods list, like steak, for instance. So if you're going to go to have a steak dinner and you have nothing but steak on your plate, awesome. That's a big thumbs up. So everything exists on a spectrum, and we want to begin to make the best possible choices on that spectrum as humanly possible. And sometimes, we're in a pinch. Let's say you're on a road trip and you are maybe not totally fat adapted yet, and you're feeling the hangry coming on, and hey, you got to push through on this road trip, and the only thing on the side of the highway in the middle of Missouri or wherever you're at is a McDonald's. So I would say, yeah, you go into that McDonald's if you decide not to fast and keep pushing through. You go into that McDonald's and you apply the same thing. You look up at that menu board and you're like, hey, on the spectrum of stuff, what's the best possible food I could probably have in McDonald's? If it were me, here's what I would do. I would ask for like some meat in a box. Well, that sounds like a Saturday Night Live skit. Get your meat in a box, step 1. Oh, that got off the rails really quickly. Okay, so I would just say, hey, instead of like a big old burger and a Big Mac, just throw some of those beef patties in a box. I'm just gonna mac on meat for a while. So that's just an example. I'm not saying that's high quality of meats. It's not some grass-fed, grass-finished kind of organic beef or something like that. But in McDonald's, that's probably the highest side of the spectrum that I can get. On the low side would be, the ice cream cones and the apple pies and the fries that are cooked in crap and all that kind of stuff. So that's what our goal is. If you're going out to eat, it's like everything's on a spectrum, and we want to eat at the highest possible self-honoring, supportive side of the spectrum as possible. And so that gives us a lot of latitude and a lot of choices, and that's what's really cool about that. Here's something interesting. Someone I really respect a lot, Dr. Kate Shanahan. She's the old LA Lakers doctor, but she's just a fascinating lady, totally smart, man. But she said in her research, she said that 85% of the calories consumed in American restaurants, 85% of the calories consumed in American restaurants are from industrial seed oils. And I believe her, because pretty much at the back of every single restaurant in America are these big vats of grease where they dump out all of their fryer grease and all the things that they cook with. And it's usually just canola oil, vegetable oil, soybean oil. And so that is pretty much what you're going to get at most restaurants. Most of their sauces are made with this stuff. I mean, it's just all their stuff is cooked in that. So I would say go to a steak dinner, make sure it's charbroiled, and you don't have to worry about the industrial seed oils and all that crap that they're making it. And then you can sub things. You can be like, hey, instead of the French fries, maybe baked sweet potato fries, or just a sweet potato, or just a baked potato, for instance, with some butter and sour cream, and not sour cream if you're trying to reduce dairy in your life. Maybe some broccoli instead. I mean, hey, meat and veggies are always going to be a winner, but be a detective with this stuff. I know it's a little bit weird, but go to a restaurant like what's this one called? I went there and I once asked what was in the sauce, because it was a health food restaurant. It's kind of a fast food restaurant, and I can't even think of the name of it now. I'm not even sure if they're in business anymore. But I remember hey, what do you guys make your sauce out of? Because there's all these sauces all over the table, and it's well, they were just listing all the ingredients, and the first thing was soybean oil. I'm well, never went there again. So it's kind of one of those things where it's totally okay to be super diligent and be a detective, and to ask these questions of the wait staff and your servers, ask them of the managers. It's totally cool to, you're spending a lot of money in restaurants, so make sure that you're getting something that you're going to feel great with, where you can still have a great time. Again, in later days, we'll talk about, hey, is it okay to be, always the weird one, or is it okay just to, fail and slip up every now and then when you decide to go for a restaurant? The short answer is absolutely. No one's perfect, and we're not going to be 100% compliant and all that, but I'll give you a percentage of what we want to shoot for, and I think it'll give you a lot of freedom and latitude when it comes to that. But we'll talk about that later on in the month. All right. Let me go to Facebook and see if there's anything before I get to the email. Cheryl says, McDonald's will serve you the meat and egg plain. They'll actually do that for you? Wow, if you ask for that, they'll actually do that for you. That is amazing. Wow. All right. Some plans for the weekend. By the way, I wasn't just asking your plans for the weekend, what you doing? I mean, it can be an innocuous question, but sometimes we can have a better day or a better weekend when we plan ahead, right? When we say, hey, you know what? I'm going to eat this weekend, or I'm going to go for this walk, or I'm going to do this exercise, or I'm going to sleep 10 hours tonight. Things like that. Things that we know to do for ourselves. Sometimes if we make those plans ahead of time and we kind of have an idea of what it's going to be ahead of time, can really help us a lot. I guess it's cold where you're at, Sarah. Is that right? Sarah says, this life change has completely changed my sleep. It is wonderful. Huh. Yeah, by the way, if you don't know, Sarah's made a lot of changes. She just posted just before this group started that she is down 35 pounds. So everyone applaud Sarah Mullen for just the tremendous effort and results that she's gotten. She's just worked so hard at it, but she's really enjoying the journey. But yeah, you start changing these inputs, and then, wow, my sleep is all better now. And I didn't even have to go to a sleep therapy class or start taking melatonin. Some of these things just start happening. And that's what's really cool about when you start to change one input in your health journey. Sometimes that changes another input, and that changes another input, and that changes another input. And then you start getting the ball rolling, and then you get all sorts of momentum going the way you want it. And that's really, really cool. Sarah hasn't had pizza since regular Thanksgiving time. I don't want to call you out, Sarah, but I think she used to have pizza a lot more than just like once every couple months or something like that. So, again, I bet her cravings have totally changed. Karen says they do. She knows what I'm talking about. Sarah eats eating at Texas Roadhouse because you find tons to eat there. I like the steak and ribs, chicken without barbecue sauce. So it sounds like Sarah's doing some serious investigative work when she goes to a restaurant. The hardest thing is avoiding the rolls and cinnamon butter. Yeah, but that stuff smells pretty good. By the way, the smells of these food, like Lidl's is one of my favorite stores. And every time I walk into a Lidl, some people call it Little. I think you're from Germany, but I walk into Lidl, and the first thing on the left is their baked goods, like all their donuts and their croissants. That's one of my favorite words to say, croissants. Makes me sound hoity-toity Frenchy. But you walk in there, and it's just like this, boom. The first thing I notice when I walk into Lidl's is this wave of smell that gets me. And there's a reason they put that stuff right as I walk in. I'm sure of it. They could have put it like way in the corner somewhere else, or but they know that like when I walk in there, it's just gonna bombard my senses, or at least my smell senses, with that, and then it makes that stuff hard to resist. I see everyone pretty much walking in there and just like sheep going to that thing. So smell is a pretty powerful input for sure. Karen says beef patties, maybe some lettuce and onion. Yeah, you can get some vegetables at McDonald's too. Hold the buns always. Yeah, you know what, buns? That's another thing about like craving buns. Like, I was like, when I started like learning about all this grains and flour and stupid stuff. I mean, I knew it wasn't long ago. I knew white buns were not a nutrient dense food item, but I just like hamburgers with buns on there. Well, after eating, romaine wrapped hamburgers now on, I'm like, man, that's so much better. My cravings of that has changed as well too. But now I look at that, I'm like, man, I would never want a white bun, like just to kind of hold my beef patty more. Man, put that on a crispy head of romaine lettuce, and gosh, it tastes so much better. You think I'm crazy? Try it for a couple months, and you'll be like, man, that is the way to have a hamburger. Same with hot dogs. Hot dogs I wrap in romaine lettuce buns, and they are way better than any stupid hot dog I had at a ballpark ever had. And so, just goes to show you, man. Burger buns, hot dog buns, those are sometimes just the delivery system for all the things that are inside. So forget that. Change a delivery system that's nutrient dense and good for you, and you'll be happier. All right, Michael's going to Texas Roadhouse tonight for some steaks. Yeah. What kind of steak do you like, Michael? Ribeye is where it's at. By the way, if you ever get a grass-fed ribeye, I don't know if Texas Roadhouse has that or not, but if you have a grass-fed steak, all that fat, you can eat that right up. I would not advise eating fat on a non-grass-fed steak because that's a lot of where the antibiotics that they pump full kind of resides in. But if you have a grass-fed steak, for instance, if that's available, man, just eat every single grizzly, delicious, goopy bite on there if you want. But that stuff tastes amazing. Okay, heading off to the email. So I want to talk about hangry, like I said I was going to talk about. So, by the way, I think I figured out how to do my little computer thing. So, let's see if I can get this working. Come on, baby, you can do it. Aha! How's that look? Ooh, let me get rid of, don't need two logos, we just only need one. So I want to talk a little bit about this symptom of hangry or hangriness. We've all experienced, and I want to show you where this comes from, okay? So that orange oval, that's your body. That's everything in your body. That's your mind and all that kind of stuff. And so at some point after we were born, we started eating carbs, mostly in the form of sugar. For a lot of us of a certain age, our pediatricians told our mothers that breastfeeding wasn't the best for little kids, so you probably need to get them on some formula as quickly as possible. So most of us from even infancy have started drinking a carb-filled breakfast, lunch, and dinner of liquid carbs in the form of formula. And then as we get a little bit older, you can imagine what pretty much every elementary school kid eats for their lunch. It's just a lot of, cookies and candies and crackers and things like that. And so anyway, and then we grow into adulthood pretty much eating a carb-centric and sugar-based diet. We don't really think of lasagna and spaghetti and bread as sugar, but they're the same thing. They produce the same amount of sugar in our blood, and our body produces insulin to deal with that. Speaking of, that's what insulin is. Insulin, you might have heard of, is our fat storage hormone. It's kind of the master hormone in our bodies, and it does a lot of things, but one of the things it does is regulate our blood sugar, and it stores that excess sugar that we don't need, because if we have too much sugar in our bloodstream, it's toxic. It's toxic. And so insulin kind of evens it all out. It keeps us functioning so we're not going into diabetic shocks. And after we secrete insulin, our cells, after years and decades of this, our cells begin to resist insulin. Insulin is produced by our pancreas, and you can just imagine your pancreas being like a muscle. You know, this gland is just producing insulin, and if you are just giving your body decades and decades of sugar and carbs, you're just going to be producing insulin, and pretty soon that pancreas is just going to get tired and wear out, because your cells, it's just not having the same effect anymore. Your cells are just kind of resisting insulin, and so the body's got to do something with this toxic sugar. So one of the things it does is it stores your sugar as fat. Okay, and so this is why you have a lot of fat cells that store sugar, because the cells that are trying to get the nutrients aren't getting them, and that's what insulin's role is to do, is to just put that excess sugar somewhere, and it's going to kind of store that as fat. And when that happens, the problem is our cells remain unfed. Our cells that are craving nutrients, like all the macronutrients that our body needs, and all the minerals and essentials and minerals, vitamins and enzymes, I mean, all that kind of stuff, they're remaining unfed because we've only been given it a pasta dinner or a cookie lunch or a Bang energy drink. And so our cells are saying, hey, we still need some food here. And so this, what's happening, that's hangry. Okay, when your cells are remaining unfed, you are getting hangry. And what do you do when you get hangry? You don't go in the refrigerator and look for a chicken breast, right? You go in there and you look for some more cookies or some ice cream, and you eat more carbs, and you can see that this is the insulin resistance infinite loop. It just goes around and around and around and around again. And so that is kind of what hangriness is. And I said yesterday that if you are ever hangry, that is a sign of metabolic dis-ease. It's just the check engine warning light on your on. Now, if you get hangry, you don't have to worry. You're not doing anything wrong. You don't have to, feel shame or guilt or anything like that. But just know that if that is ever happening in your life, that is a big warning sign. And so what you're learning in this 30 days is vitally important, because that is not a way for humans to walk around and exist. It's totally unhealthy. And I know we make fun about it and we joke about it, and there's t-shirts that are made about hangriness and all that kind of stuff. And again, the Snickers commercials are all about this. You'll probably see Super Bowl commercials about, we'll all laugh at being really hungry and stuff, but we're able to go long amounts of time without consuming food. That is, if we are dependent on proteins and fats for our main macronutrient. Which leads me to today's email, when I want to talk about rule number 3. It's the last of the rules, so that's good. I only have 3 rules at the Optimized Life, and I've borrowed all of this from one of my biggest health heroes, Erin Power. I'm going to try to get her on so you guys can meet her. I've pretty much stolen most of the concepts that I've learned from her. And this rule that I have about, I'll talk about the rule in a second. But okay, the first rule, you all remember, right? Rule number 1 is to always answer the call of hunger with a meal. So every time you feel hunger coming on, that's your body's way of queuing up this desire for nutrients. There's nothing wrong with it. You don't have to be afraid of hunger. You don't have to put it down. Whenever you're hungry, you go ahead and feed those cells, okay? And then rule number 2, this is how you do it, right? You prioritize proteins and prioritize fats. So fats and proteins are what you're going to prioritize, okay? And so today we're talking about rule number 3. So I wanted to talk to you about my favorite analogy of all time. So let me pull this up. All right, pulling this up. Maybe. Maybe not. Come on, baby. Aha. There it goes. Okay. That's not my favorite analogy, my logo. I just like to flip it up there. Okay, the campfire, my favorite analogy of all the times. Actually, there's two campfires that I want to talk about. So if you've ever been in the woods or in your backyard and you want to start a campfire, you really have two campfires that need to go to get a fire going. The first one is where you get the kind of fire going and you get some twigs, you get some paper plates from your picnic, you get some newspaper wadded up, you get some hay and some straw, anything that's flammable. Maybe you'll get some gasoline and throw that on there. And as soon as you light that match, boom, you have like white hot flame, and it's just like, yes, it's very exciting. And all of a sudden it's like, man, after 2 or 3 seconds, that thing's going down. So you're in a mad rush now to find some more sticks, find some more twigs, find some more pine cones or leaves or something like that. And you just keep throwing that on there to kind of keep that fire going. And that's kind of the analogy of what carbs are like. Now remember, carbs are not bad. We're not here to demonize carbs because they are a fuel source. The same way that a campfire that you're starting out is not a bad campfire, but it's not a very efficient one. It's not efficient if you want to be walking around all the time in a mad panic to make sure that fire doesn't go out by throwing a bunch of trash on there. And here's the thing about that campfire. Have you ever noticed that the fuel or the smoke is really awful? It's stinky and it's black and it just burns like a lot more dirty, shall we say. And our bodies are like that. When we're focusing on carbs as the primary fuel for our body, it's just a kind of a dirty, burning fuel. And it doesn't last a whole heck of a long time, does it? And so what we want to do is we want to have a campfire that's the opposite of that. So the second campfire is the one that we really all enjoy, is the one where you're putting a big old honking log on that fire. And maybe you've done the hard work to chop down a tree and to get that log on there, but you basically put that log on there and then that thing starts burning, and it burns for hours and hours and hours. The heat is steady. You can sit around and talk, and it doesn't, flame up real fast and go down and up and down and up and down. It just burns really, really steady. The smoke is a lot less offensive. You hardly even notice it at all. And so that is the kind of fuel that our body burns, like that campfire, when we are prioritizing proteins and fats. And so that is kind of the fire that you want in your life. You don't want to always be stoking it and keeping that fire burning by eating 6 meals a day and by having carbs for the bulk of your nutrition. Again, if you prioritize proteins and fats, you're going to have big logs on your fire. They're going to last you and satiate you and help you through this thing called life. And so that brings us to the Optimized Life rule number 3, to de-emphasize carbohydrates. To de-emphasize carbohydrates. We're just de-emphasizing them. So I'm not saying that they're bad. They are just being de-emphasized. And so you can see that is exactly why the rules of TOL, first rule, to not talk about, no, wait, no, that's not it. That's Fight Club. The first rule, answer the call of hunger with a meal. And as you begin to answer that call, now you can apply rule number 2 and rule number 3. Okay, so I've got hunger, and so what am I going to do to satiate that call of hunger? I'm going to prioritize proteins and fats. I'm just going to de-emphasize carbohydrates. And you can put any kind of food through that test. Now, we've already kind of talked about removing grains and sugar. So those are the most offensive, the most dirty burning carbohydrates. And so once you get rid of that, the only kind of high carb foods that are left are pretty much vegetables, maybe a little bit of fruit, which we'll talk about in one of our days, what kind of a appropriate amount of fruit is. Nature's candy is another way to talk about fruit, but pretty much like vegetables and maybe like a sweet potato here and there, or maybe even a white potato. Oh my gosh. Carbs are not bad. They are a fuel source, but you're not going to get fat. You're not going to put a lot of body fat on by just eating high carb broccoli all day. But if you just, rather than call those foods good or bad or unhealthy or healthy or anything like that, we just say, hey, what's the most supportive, self-honoring food that I can have? It's going to be a dish that's high in proteins and fats. So let's go back to the steak dinner that Michael's going to have tonight. So you want to have the biggest honking steak possible on your plate, and then maybe like a little broccoli as a garnish. If you were plant-based, maybe you would just have a whole plate of broccoli and no steak. And I would say, hey, what's going to sustain you longer? What's going to be the thing that's going to to keep you satiated and keep the fire burning like the big log fire, probably the big steak dinner, the plate of broccoli, although that might not be so offensive. If you are emphasizing carbohydrates in your life, that's just going to be a dirty burning fuel. And if you have a big bold plate of broccoli, I promise you when you get home, you're probably going to be like, you know what, not really. I'm still hungry. So what else we got? What else is in the pantry? What's in the snack food containers that I could, quench this hunger with? So as we begin to prioritize proteins and fats, de-emphasize carbohydrates, if those are the bulk of our meals, that is just going to set us up for lifelong success. Hey, the neat thing about this, and I'll kind of end with this, and then I'll see if you guys have any questions or not. But I wanted to show you this. This popped up in my Facebook feed today. Let me get that going here for you. There we go. So this popped up on my Facebook feed today. So it says Kachava. And the reason I'm going to show you this is because I'm going to apply rule number 2 and rule number 3 especially, but probably rule number 1. So, okay, all the 3 rules. This is how it works out in real life. You're scrolling down Facebook and you see this thing called Kachava. Kachava. I don't know what that is, but it says hands down the world's healthiest breakfast. So now I'm intrigued because, hey, breakfast is the most important meal of the day. By the way, I don't know if I'm big enough to, I don't think it's the most important meal of the day, but even if you have break fast, if you're breaking your fast at 4 p.m., that's fine. That's breakfast. But I know what this is saying. Hey, when you start your morning off, you want to have the world's healthiest breakfast. So that's quite a claim. And then I look down and I'm like, this guy, he looking good. He's like 80 years old and he is looking ripped and shredded. I wonder if that's Photoshop, but even if it's not, I want to look like that guy. I want to be like I want to have a surfboard and I want to be happy. I want to have a big old long gray beard and I want to have, ripping pecs and biceps like this guy. That guy looks really, really good. So discover the cleanest, most nutrient-dense breakfast imaginable. So now I'm intrigued. Now I want to know what this is. So I'm going to go over to this website. By the way, I probably shouldn't have clicked on this website because now I'm probably going to get all these ads for your all-in-one plant-based superfood meal. So again, this is good marketing. I'm hooked. First of all, it's plant-based, so I know that's trendy. We talked about that a couple days ago. I mean, all the things that can go into plant-based. And that buzzword, superfood. That's a pet peeve of mine. I think I talked about that earlier. I hate superfood. I don't think that there is any. But let's say I didn't know that yet. Let's say, okay, it's an all-in-one. It's plant-based. It's a superfood meal. It's going to fuel my body and my mind, and I'm going to look like 80-year-old surfer guy here. So far, so good. So I'm just going to scroll down and see. Okay, it's got some influencers. These look like Instagram models. They're all drinking that. They all look skinny and healthy. This guy looks really surprised that he can make cookies out of this stuff. With over 70 plant-based superfoods and nutrients. I don't know what all this stuff is, but I'm looking at these pictures and there's a lot of color and this is good. So here's the thing right here. Full ingredient list. Okay, now again, maybe you're not geeky like me, but this is what we want to do with all of these. We don't want to pay attention to any of this stuff. None of these guys, the way they look. I want to see what's in the ingredient list. And this is what I want to examine with this. So it's got 70 plus plant-based superfoods, nutrients in a single ready-to-go meal. So I know it's quick. I can probably just throw it in some water and be done with it. I don't have to cook a meal. So there's some plant protein blends. So, I don't want to think about all these for a second. We'll talk about that down here. But man, all this actually, it sounds like I'm ripping on this, but this actually looks really, really pretty good. So if I have this scoop in my smoothie, I'm getting, camu berries and maquai berries and organic strawberries and flax seeds and whole grain oats. I mean, not so much. Chia seeds, those are supposed to be good. Someone's told me that they were a superfood. I don't like to eat beets, but I can get some beets in there. And oh my gosh, look at all this salad stuff. There's tons of stuff. Oh my gosh, I've got enzymes and probiotics and prebiotics and vitamins and minerals and some other ingredients like guar gum. What's that? Xanthan gum? I don't know. But all this looks good. So there's a lot of ingredients, right? 70 plus plant-based items. No fillers, no nonsense. It's vegan. Yay! It's not dairy, so that's good for Kimberly. No gluten. Okay. No soy. Yay. No preservatives. Nothing artificial. Colors, flavors, sweeteners. Yippee. All right. Now let's apply rule number 1 and rule number 2 and rule number 3 to the ingredient list and see how this kind of works out and figure out if this is something that we would want to have as a meal. Well, first of all, if we're answering the call of hunger with a meal, for me, this doesn't fit the qualifications. First of all, it's a smoothie or it's a shake. It's a scoop of stuff that you're throwing into water or juice or some beverage, and that's not a meal. I don't care. If you want to call that a meal, that's not the kind of meal I'm talking about. I want something that you're going to eat, like a meal, not something you're going to throw in a blender. Okay, so it doesn't really pass the test of answering the call of hunger with a meal by getting a smoothie going. Okay, but aside from that, let's just look at calories. We haven't really talked too much about calories, but there's 240. So pretty much you'll burn 240 at a gym. So if you go for a workout for about an hour on a treadmill, you might burn 240 calories and it might kind of even out kind of thing. It's got 7 grams of fat. Again, I don't know what a gram is because I live in the States, but it's not a lot of fat. 25 grams of carbohydrates and 25 grams of protein. So it's about even when it comes to that. That's a pretty high carb gram thing. Again, carbs are not bad, and the sugar is pretty low on this, but that's I would say that's a pretty high to medium carb drink for sure. And by the way, carbs are really easy to get in drinks. You can really get your carb load up high. But again, we're not thinking about carbs are bad. We're just like, hey, I want to de-emphasize carbs. I want to emphasize proteins. And so I would say that if that carb count was, closer to 5 or something less than that, but the proteins were higher and the fat was higher, that might be an acceptable option, although it might not meet the standards of rule number 1, but it would fit rule number 2. But this one is kind of disregarding rule number 3. It's pretty much emphasizing carbohydrates in there. And then again, all these things look pretty good, but these are high carb foods. These are carbohydrate foods, and so they're not bad. These are all really good foods, right? For the most part. But if you're trying to de-emphasize them, it's not matching the smell test. So let's look at what 27.75 grams of this is. It's pretty much yellow pea protein, organic whole grain brown rice protein. So all of a sudden we're getting some legumes and some grains in there. So this is pretty much a grain-based drink thing. There's some organic Sasha Inchi, Palincula Volabilis, I don't know what that is. There's amaranth, which I think is a seed. Quinoa. By the way, have you seen that commercial where they're trying to pronounce quinoa? It's pretty funny. I love those commercials. But quinoa, hey, that's a seed, and that's cool. But I'm looking at 27.75 grams of plant-based protein, and it's pretty much nothing substantial, nothing that great. And then all the things like, okay, here's what's crazy about this, then I'll be done with this. But all of these ingredients, you think you're eating just like a massive blend of this stuff. But then you go down and you see how much of that stuff is in there. 6.1 grams of all of these flowers and a couple of the berries, and that's total. So there's 6 grams of this. There's some fiber up here. Again, whole grain oats. I don't want that in my life. And then this adaption blend. So there's less than like a gram. These are like milligrams. So talking about even so trace amounts. So 100% organic ginger root. That's fine, but I'm getting just the teeniest like little sprinkle, and that's not going to really do me much good. This is not a superfood, if you want to call it that, because there really isn't any. But this one, for me, this doesn't match the smell test. Super greens, okay, vegetable blend, 500 milligrams. That is the teeniest little smidgen of vegetable blend, and these are all what is in this vegetable blend. So you're not going to taste, much organic cauliflower or asparagus or tomato or cabbage or parsley. They can tell you it's in there, but in such small amounts. So, again, if you take the time to go over these, again, it's a little geeky, but if you go over a ingredient list on a website or any kind of food, that's what passes the smell test. All you got to do is apply these 3 rules, and say, okay, will I be answering the call of hunger with a meal? If it's a little scoop that you throw in water and a shake and you run out the door, I would say no. By the way, take some time to make some eggs and bacon. How much longer is that going to take you? To make a smoothie takes about 5 minutes, and I can fry up some eggs and bacon in almost that amount of time. So for me, that's kind of negligible. But also, hey, does it prioritize proteins? If it does, it might be something that you want to have. If it de-emphasizes carbohydrates, it might be something you want to have. And if you continue to do that in your life for a long amount of time, carbohydrate dependency will go away. Protein and fat dependency will come to the forefront, and you will look and you will feel better than you ever have. You will operate better than you ever have, and you'll probably be a lot happier than you ever have. And cravings will change. You'll begin to crave the kind of high fat, high protein kind of meals, and those are the things that then you're really talking about that momentum that's going downhill in the good way. So, all right, let me see if there's anything else in the Facebook group. Kevin stays away from shakes and smoothies in general. Stick to rule number 1. That's what I'm talking about. I don't know why everyone's on a smoothie like craze. And again, I've been there before. I have a Nutra Bullet or I've got one of those Ninja blenders. I use it all the time, but I originally bought it just to crush up like some pineapple and some spinach and peanut butter and banana and stuff like that. And I thought I was doing my body a big fat favor, but I was really just giving my big body a lot more fat on there, just dousing it with sugar through what I thought was, it's a smoothie, so it's got to be healthy. I know some people that are like, oh, my kids love smoothies. I snuck some kale in there. It's not like Jim Gaffigan, but you put a little kale in there and you think that you're doing something good, but it's pretty much a big strawberry apple juice smoothie with a little bit of kale in there. You're not doing your body much favors with that. Not only you're dousing it with a bunch of big sugar bomb, but thinking that you're sneaking some kale in there and it's going to make it some power superfood it ain't going to do it for you. Yeah, Kevin said, that's half your daily amount if you're doing keto. So keto would be like, and we'll talk about this a little bit later on, but if you're going keto and you want to do that, you're pretty much eliminating carbs to anywhere from like 35, let's say just say 50 grams of total carbohydrates less a day. So if that's a goal of yours and you wanted to do keto, then you got to look at, your protein power pack, the superfood, that's the most awesome breakfast you ever had, and say, hey, that blows out half of my carb grams for the whole day. It's like, man, I think I'd rather have like a bowl of strawberries than a frickin', pea-based, plant food shake, but that's just me. Sarah talks about the non-scale victories. I remember my acid reflux being gone after week 2. I was so excited. Yeah, we're going to talk a lot coming up next week about non-scale victories, and that's what's really exciting. There's so many of them that as you become more fat adapted, you'll see it on the scale probably if that's a goal of yours. But man, I've got 50 other non-scale victories that I'll be sharing with you that might have an impact in your life. Michael, I definitely feel better after these last 5 days, but I don't feel like the $1 million I'm shooting for. Yeah, it takes time. First of all, awesome. I'm so glad you feel good after 5 days because that's awesome. And it doesn't take much time, but it usually takes, for me, it's the magic number is 21 days. That's usually what it takes to kind of switch your metabolism. For me, it was 21 days on the nose. I was eating like, a jerk for all these years, and I switched my diet to what I'm talking about now, and it took me 21 days. Everyone said it would take 21 days, and it took 21 days. On day 21, I felt terrible. On day 22, I felt great. It was just like, boom, someone had like flipped a switch. Maybe it was self-fulfilling prophecy, but I would just get like, I felt terrible. I feel good, but just had like just a lot of brain fog, and my body was mad at me because I was getting rid of some of the carbs that I was dependent on, and the cravings were still there for all the foods that I used to enjoy. And I just would like about every 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I just like couldn't really function. I was just like, just low energy. I really need a bang. When I say I need a bang, I'm talking about the energy drink, not, get your head out of the gutter, kids. But yeah, I needed, a Monster Energy or something to kind of get me going again. But on like day 22, it was like, something different. And so it takes our bodies a little time to adjust to this kind of new way because it's mad. It's so used to the campfire. It's so used to you throwing the sticks and the twigs on it, and your brain saying, hey, Michael, give me some more of them sticks and twigs. But you're like, no, brain, you listen to me. I'm going to throw a big log on the fire and you're going to learn to eat this log. And then after a while, your brain and your body is going to say, yeah, okay, this joker doesn't want to feed me, little Debbie's anymore, or oatmeal breakfasts anymore, or, crackers for snacks. This joker wants to go to, Longhorn Steakhouse and get ribeyes tonight, and Texas Steakhouse and get T-bone steak or a New York strip or something like that. And so that's what that joker wants to do. All right, I'll adapt to that, and that's what's pretty cool. So I'm glad you're on this journey with us, Michael. It sounds like you're making just great progress, and I think you're going to continue to feel better and better and better. Oh, real quickly, you know what someone didn't tell me to do for the 21 days that I felt like total dog crap was to supplement with electrolytes. Okay, and I thought the only way you could get electrolytes was through like Gatorade. There are some electrolytes in Gatorade, but that's not what you want. You don't want Gatorade. What you need is some pink Himalayan salt. Okay, so if you don't have any of that on hand, just go get some pink Himalayan salt. You get it at any grocery store, and just put like a pinch in your water, for instance, or put it heavily on your food. Just salt up, man. Get lots of salt in your diet, and you will. I wish someone would have told me that, because I think that would have eliminated all of my brain fog in the 21 days where my metabolism was totally going through a major transformation. So I've heard, the people that I've worked with and given that tip to, there have been so many people that have not felt the what we call the low carb flu. And so if you're having the low carb flu, the best way to get out of that is to power through it, but also to get a lot of electrolytes in the form of like some pink Himalayan salt. There's some other products that are a little bit more expensive, but that's just the quick one to do. So if you're interested in that, I can send you another place to go get some electrolytes that you can mix in your drinks that are really awesome tasting and good for you. But grab some pink Himalayan salt, pinch it on your food, throw it in your water. You won't even taste it, and you'll do yourself some good. Sarah said it took her about 2 weeks. Yeah, it definitely depends on the person, for sure. Michael's going to take the full 30 days. You're hardcore, dude. Yeah, if you're around a Lidl, I live in Richmond, Virginia. That is an awesome place. Watch the sales for grass-fed meats and stuff like that. That's just an awesome place to, like right now they have New York strip steaks for like $5.30. And so pretty much there's always a grass-fed like steak option that's on sale there. If not, yeah, find them in your area that's on sale. Again, you might have to get kind of creative shopping with that. But yeah, Sarah had low carb flu to like a week, so good deal. She salted up. So all right, let me see if there's anything on YouTube. There isn't. All right, you guys. Well, that's it for the first week. The first 5 days of 30 Days to Amaze. So I got some cool emails coming out on Saturday and Sunday, but I just want to encourage you to go and practice these rules, practice them throughout this weekend, and Monday we'll get the ground running again. I think on Monday I'm giving you the most important graphic I'll ever share with you when it comes to this. So you're going to want to tune in on Monday. So anyway, I hope you guys have a great week. If you have questions, throw them in our Facebook group. If you want to post about something, remember it gets you 5 points a day. So post about things that you find interesting or you want people to cheer you on with. Message me questions, message me, email me, any way you can get a hold of me. And I know that other people would have those questions and concerns and thoughts as well too. So you're kind of asking it for other people. So take advantage of me. I am here to be taken advantage of. All right. Well, you guys have a great weekend.